back to the Secrets of Happily Ever After. And I'm so excited for my guest today. She is Katie Runyon of Faithful Flings. Katie resides in Kansas City, Missouri with her husband and 4 children who have all flown the coop. She is left with an empty house, but not an empty marriage, yet she spends a lot of time begging them to come home for the weekend. You can find her outside doing a lazy run, visiting local donut shops, taking naps, or with her nose in a book. In the spring of 2022, she finally took the leap and started her own business where she creates role play dates for you and your spouse to do together. So Katie is the role play expert. She named her website Faithful Fling because of all of her role play scenarios will be just between you and your spouse, hence the faithful part. And she named these fun role play dates flings because she wanted to apply a fun and flirty word to your role play date nights. She loves what she does, and she can't wait for the moment when Faithful Fling becomes as a common name as date night. Katie enjoys encouraging everyone to embrace their sexuality, improve their intimacy and connection with their spouse, and learn to have fun in the bedroom. Thanks so much for being here, Katie. How are you?
I'm so great. Thank you, Monica, for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah, this is fun, and I love it because this is a little bit of a spicier episode than I do, but I think it's so important. And especially when you're faithfully married, it's so much fun to engage some of that creativity and fun to keep the kind of roommate doldrum boredom out of the bedroom. So I love what you do, but I am hoping that you will tell us why it's important to bring novelty and playfulness into the bedroom.
Right. Thank you. I think it's so important because it keeps the romantic spark alive. It helps you get out of your routine. It really helps remind you of like what you were like when you first started dating each other, like that kind of fun and flirty attitude that you had and like what attracted you to each other. It helps you stay creative and explorative. It's a great reminder for you to be intentional and make you realize that like all your time, energy, and effort that you put towards your spouse is worth it. And I also love to equate it to like vacation. Like if you go on a vacation, typically your sexual experiences are like a little bit more fun because you know you've never been there before. It's like a new place and you're at your best, you're trying new things, you're eating great food. So kind of adding that same novelty and playfulness will just really add. You don't have to go on vacation to feel those fun, creative vibes anymore. And that is why I think it is super important and something that you can add to your marriage because it adds a vibrancy that can be really fun in like the boredom of everyday life with someone. So it helps kind of spice things up.
Yeah. And how long have you been married, Katie?
I've been married for 24 years. Super
There you
fun.
go. And it works. I mean, 24 years with the same human, you don't want that to get boring and stale, right? So I love that you've kind of created a way to bring that novelty and fun in, even though you've been together for so many years.
Very true. It was something that we just kind of came across by happenstance. And then we were like, you know what? This is really fun. Like other people should try this. Like this is, I mean, we've got to put something together because we really wished something like Faithful Fling was out there when we first started exploring the idea of role playing together.
Yeah, well, we've alluded to this idea of novelty and fun, but will you tell us exactly what role playing is?
Sure. For this conversation, I think role playing is when you are going to embrace a new persona and have some different character traits, and you're going to change up your appearance. And then you and your spouse are just going to go on a date together. That is what you're going to do. Just simple, fun, kind of exploring things through a different lens and leaving behind all of your other like problems of the world too. Like just not letting those things stare at you in the face. When I really liked it because it got me out of mommy mode and helped me realize like I am still a great mom, but I can also be a woman that has her own sexuality and I can be passion filled at the same time. So it was just a catalyst to help me recognize that I can be I can be both people and that's okay. So,
Yeah.
um, and those scenarios might be like you and your spouse are playing roles and your neighbors and you meet for the first time and that attraction is like super strong and really fun. And maybe you're set up on a blind date and you and your partner go to an outdoor concert in different personas and you really allow that sexual tension to build and that anticipation. So it's just really fun, classy, fun ways to be able to like experience something new together.
So in the way you teach it, do you stay in character for the full date? So you're like constantly channeling this kind of character that you're developing throughout the date?
I We love to suggest to try to do that, but life happens as well. Maybe you're having your role play date or fling at home and the baby wakes up and you just have to pause and take care of whatever you need to do, whatever interruption you have, and then just come back to it. As with anything, the more you do it, it kind of gets easier and easier. It can feel a little daunting at first, but if you just kind of go for it and you go all in, and it's really great when both you and your spouse go all in, you're going to have a really fun positive experience.
So give us an example. Like, what was your first experience with role playing?
I always laugh when I tell this one because it's probably not the best example of how you should, if you've never role played before, and like present it to your spouse, but I'm going to give you what my first experience was and then probably what you could do differently. So our first experience was when our children were really young. So this were years and years ago, and we were watching television, and I wanted to mention that we weren't really in a great place in our marriage. I put everything that I was into being a mom. It really fulfilled me, and I just gave the rest, my leftovers, to my husband. There was no intention. And then the same thing with my husband. He was really into his career, and then I just got his leftovers. So I did want to preface that, like, that is where we were at in our marriage. And we were watching television together, and we saw an iconic pop star pop up. And he kind of looked at me and he's like, "Hey, Katie, how come you never dress up for me?" And in my mind, I was like, "Well, how come you don't do this and this and this for me?" But I got a little curious. And for once, I actually stayed quiet and I thought about it. And I got like, would I like to dress up with him? What would that look like for me? And I ran with it. So I can remember I put all three of the kids in the car and I went to Forever 21 and I bought a cute little skirt and I made an effort. And I remembered a night that he was playing a soccer league and he wasn't going to get home until late. So I put all the kids down to bed and I got myself ready and I put on that cute little skirt and I matched it with some boots that I already had. And I got really creative with this t-shirt and I cut it up and I put my long blonde hair into pigtails or ponytails. And I greeted him at the door and he was like, and I said, "Professor
Oh.
Jones, I've been waiting on you." And his face was like, "This is the best day of my life. Like, who is this fun girl that she's like back? Like, this is the girl that I married." And to give him full credit, he was like, "I'm sorry I kept you waiting." That was the first experience. And what that was, it was like a nice catalyst for us to remember who we were when we first started dating and we were married before we just suddenly, through negligence on our own, became just parents to these kids and we were roommates and we were just surviving. We weren't thriving. We were just making it one day after another. And this just helped us kind of put more time, energy, and effort into each other. I think surprising him, he was like, "Oh my goodness." And he thought of me often for days after that. And we kind of thought together, like, maybe we should be like, let's think up of another scenario. And it just kind of built on into more different aspects of our marriage. It helped us build more connection, like emotional intimacy. And we just were able to carry on through that. So I always love to suggest, like, maybe have that high emotional intimacy first and then bring in some novelty and playfulness. So I've seen it work both ways. And that was our first role playing experience. We had a fabulous time. And we then just decided people should try this. So we created the thing we wish it existed. And that's when we came up with Faithful Fling.
That is so cool. And I love what you're saying about that because I remember when my husband and I had been married for a while, we had a couple of kids, and I went and got my hair done and completely changed like the color and the style and everything. And my husband was like, "Ooh, I feel like I'm with a whole new woman," right? And it's like, of course it's still me, but it's just kind of that fun novelty that just brings that little extra spark, like, "Ooh, this is kind of fun," you know?
Right. And it is, you're just having a role play date with your best friend, your spouse, and it's just adding that extra little element of something being just a little bit different, and that can be really vibrant for a long-term committed relationship.
I love that. I love that. So, how do you think that role playing actually helps couples?
It really helped me, role playing really helped me get out of the mommy mode, like I mentioned before. And it helps you also to be able to have some playfulness, because as adults, we really don't have that much of an opportunity to be playful. And like with your spouse, like there's no greater place to be playful than the bedroom. So I always like to say the bedroom is like recess for adults. You can be as loud, as sweaty, as playful as you want. It's just like the perfect place for it.
So, if you want to try role playing, let's say you're like, okay, you're listening to this podcast and you're probably listening on your own, and you're like, that actually sounds kind of fun. How would you bring it up to your spouse?
Well, you could honestly just have them listen to this podcast again together, right? I know you love to encourage couples to listen together, but one really constructive way to do it is to have an open communication and conversation with your spouse and say, "Hey, babe, I love our sex life. And you know what I came across today? The idea of role playing. And I got really curious about it, and it sounds super exciting to me." And then you explain to them what that might look like for you. I love the idea of dressing up for you and then you hitting on me like in a hotel bar or something like that. Like you could kind of tell them what it would look like. Do you want to learn about this more with me? So you're explaining to them what it looks like, how that excites you, and then you're offering them the opportunity to think about it as well. And then asking if they wanted to explore this new topic with you. And great ways would be to listen to this podcast, check out Faithful Fling online. And then another thing you can do is really make sure you can ask yourself a few questions with your spouse. Will this be an experience enjoyable for both of us? Will this be connecting for both of us? Will this be pleasurable for both of us? Will adding playfulness and novelty enhance our relationship? So you can ask yourself a couple of these questions. And if they're all yeses, give it a shot. I mean, you may as well try it. And you know what? If it's not, that's okay. You can just
Yeah.
try something different. You can come back and revisit the conversation again. It doesn't mean it's like a forever something, or forever no. And that's okay too. So you get to decide on that. And maybe it's something that you would also say, you know what? Let's work on some of our emotional intimacy, like connection, communication, honesty, and truthfulness, things like that. And then we'll be able to add in the novelty and playfulness. And to me, that is the perfect recipe for like super passionate filled sex life, is having high level of intimacy and then adding that novelty and playfulness into it. It is powerful.
Absolutely. Would you ever suggest that somebody just like start it kind of like you did and just be like, get into character and then just see what their spouse thinks about it?
I'm not going to say no. I mean, it certainly worked for me, and we have created an entire business. I think you kind of like, I knew my husband, so that wasn't going to be totally like out of left field. But have you ever dressed up for Halloween or something in those costumes? And then you're kind of like if he's Superman, I mean, I think we naturally do this a little bit anyways, or any sexual experience we're typically having some sort of fantasy. Like for me, if I put on some new sexy lingerie, in my mind, I'm going to be like, he's going to think I look so good that he's not even going to be able to he's going to have to kiss me against the wall. It's going to be hard to make it like the 6 steps to our bed. So I think naturally we go into a fantasy element, whether we just even recognize we do or not. Our brains are wired to do these things. So, but yes, if you want to seduce your spouse by dressing up kind of sexy, I think you should go for it.
I love that so much. So let's move into like a little bit tactical. So let's say your spouse is like, okay, let's try it. How do you suggest we get into character for our role play date?
Absolutely. Definitely a big one is going ahead and like fully embracing what that new character is to you. Like take on some new characteristics. Something that really helps me is changing up my appearance a little bit, whether that is how I change like do my hair differently. Maybe I do like a heavy hand with my makeup, or maybe I don't do anything with my makeup, right? I like to play with like little temporary tattoos. I don't personally have any. To me, that is really fun and kind of like a surprise element. Like he,
Or let them
as
find it or something.
right, exactly. Let him find it. If I'm staying at home, I have a few crazy wigs. Like I have long blonde hair. So if I put on like a dark wig, it's like totally different. Just like your experience with your total change in hair. I think that that's great. One thing that is kind of interesting, I always suggest having a drink in your hand, Monica, because it gives you something to do with your hands because you're not really sure sometimes what to do. And then if you like can't think of something to say, you just take a little sip of whatever is in your glass. It gives you a second to like calibrate your mind to be able to say something, and that's pretty seamless. Like for the men, wear your hat backwards, totally sexy. Wear some spectacles. I don't care if you even pop out the lens for them, just like something a little bit different. If you were already in the market for some new clothes or a pair of shoes that you were going to get, debut it for a fling or a role play date night. It doesn't matter. And remember, you're on like the same team with your spouse. Like you're not trying to stump each other. Like if I decide I came from somewhere in Texas, he's not going to be like, oh, yeah, well, what high school did you go to? You know, we're on the same team. We want to have like a really seamless, fun experience together. And those are just some fun, easy ways. We have a whole bunch of tips and tricks on our website as well. But those are just some nice, like, working on all five senses is another thing. Changing up your cologne, you know, the different texture of your shirt, all of those.
So good. So good. So you mentioned your website. Let's talk about that for a second. So if somebody's like, okay, this is interesting, I want to look into it. Tell us about the website, how to kind of navigate it, get started. Like what have you created for people?
Thanks. I think we've created like a safe, classy place for you to find role play dates for you and your spouse to do together. Again, that's why we call it Faithful Fling, because all of our role play dates are just between you and your spouse. And we wanted to call these role play dates something fun. So we came up with flings. So when you come to our website, it's a membership based website. And you would just sign up, determine which kind of membership we offer to. One is when you have one fling released to your account every month. And the other option is one fling released to your account every other month. And I'd love to remind everybody that, or tell everybody that our website, you and your spouse share one membership, but you have separate usernames and passwords because we want your roles to be very different. And we think that that is one of the main elements of why having a role play date with Faithful Fling is different than just something on your own, is because having your role only that you get to know about, it allows you to adapt things. It allows you to be super creative, allows you to spice things up and just make sure that you offer those surprises that we've written in there. In fact, we think it's so important, Monica, that in our fleeing descriptions, we have an entire section that says what your spouse knows about your role, and then an entire other section that says what surprises are implemented in there for your spouse. So we think that's really fun. But you're going to find scenarios that read a lot like a story. We'll give you location ideas, character developments, like a new job. We give you tips and tricks on how to get into character and so much more. And then one thing that we have that a lot of people love to use is a name change option, because names are important. So, for example, our first fling is it's called the test drive, and it's free because we think everybody should have the opportunity to decide if role playing with your spouse is going to be a connecting and pleasurable experience at no cost to you. So for 21 days, you have a free fling and you can get to decide if that's going to be fun for you. I will mention that role play dates, there is a lot of prep work for it, but it is a mental foreplay. Like our brains are our largest sexual organ and the most important thing. So we really think that preparing for a role play date or our flings just enhances everything. Like take that time, energy, and effort, and you're putting it towards your spouse and your marriage. It's a beautiful thing.
What's so cool about, I was thinking about that too, is like they're only once a month. So like you could use that as inspiration. You know, you do your flings once a month, and then maybe another time you kind of come up with your own kind of version or twist or whatever like really works for you and your spouse. Or after a little while, you can take like a compilation of what you've really enjoyed about the flings and make your start making your own. So I do think that that's, you know, a lot of inspiration and fun that you can take from how you've done it and then just start implementing different things into your marriage, because I feel like the more you can do this, the better. I mean, so fun to be like movie stars or actresses or like, you know, just kind of channel something. I mean, why do we love to sit and watch sitcoms? Because it's so far from our actual life, right? Like, I love watching The Bachelor because I'm like, that is so far from my experience. It's just so fun to watch, like, the train wreck that is happening on the screen. But, like, how much more fun if you can really implement that into your marriage, bring it into the bedroom with you, and just explore these different personas. Like, what would it be like to date, you know, a high school jock, or, you know, all of these
Right.
different characters that you're creating for us. So I think that is just really, really fun.
And it's really safe because you're in the safety of your own marriage. And why not have a great time with your best friend? Right.
That is really key too. If you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know, like I don't, I'm a little unsure about this. It's like remembering that part of this as well is creating that safety in your marriage, that you can be whoever you want. Like, and it's kind of showing that, it's like putting that on the forefront, that like, hey, I always talk about to my couples, like one of the greatest blessings of being married is pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone to be the best version of yourself. And nobody has to see it except for your spouse, you know, like they're going to see all these changes. They get to witness all the different versions of you. And so why not act out some fun scenario and just play with some different personas?
I love that, Monica. That's perfect.
So cool. So tell me, what is the most important lesson you can teach my audience about how to live happily ever after with your spouse?
Oh my goodness. Don't take yourself too seriously. Honestly, try new things to break out of your routine. Don't ever get to the roommate stage. Don't be afraid to surprise yourself and your spouse. Always work on your emotional intimacy so that you can have high connection and communication and commitment and honesty and trust, in that you're able just to build that emotional intimacy. And then if you add in the novelty and the playfulness and the newness, it is the best recipe for some hot sexual experiences with your partner. And I want everyone to have a vibrant, fun, passion filled sex life. And I think that role playing is a fabulous way to bring those elements into your life.
Oh, so good. And we could do a whole nother episode on this, but I'm just going to touch on it for just a second, because I talk a lot about the differences between love and desire. And love is very predictable, whereas desire is unpredictable. It's new, it's kind of fun. And so if you've reached the stage in your marriage where you're like, the sex is like, whatever, we do it when we have to, you know, it's always great to bring in that novelty, that unexpected, that mystery that you just don't know, that ratchets up that desire. So fantastic that you have created this for everyone. But tell us how you have that not taking yourself too seriously, that playfulness. How have you applied that in your own marriage to strengthen your relationship, your commitment, your intimacy?
Well, just learning to have fun together. I mean, if I'm not taking myself too seriously, then I don't really care what I look like if I decide to try to. My husband's a great golfer, but I'm horrible. Like, I played softball in college. So you're not supposed to stride when you swing, but I do. Like, not taking yourself serious and like trying to have a great time with what they like to do as well. And I think that putting all this time and energy and effort into creating a relationship that is meaningful was super impactful and intentional, that has built on into our marriage. allows us to have fun together, allows us to have a super sexy sex life, and all of those fabulous high emotional things as well.
Oh, I love that so much. So this has been so much fun, Katie. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for bringing this kind of topic into awareness. Tell the viewers where they can find more about you and Faithful Fling and sign up for their free fling.
Yes, thank you so much. You can follow me along on Instagram. It's just at Faithful Fling. And then our website is faithfulfling.com. And this is where you would sign up for your free 21-day trial to be able to decide if role playing with your spouse is going to be a connecting and pleasurable experience. And we certainly hope that it is. I so appreciate your time today and talking with me about something that is so passionate for me, just allowing couples to reconnect and rekindle and reignite that passion that they once had.
Well, thank you so, so much to you as well. To learn more ways to deepen your intimacy and strengthen your relationship, make sure you watch this video next.